Welcome back. It's still the program New Done this Wednesday with Charity James and Akim today. Of course, we want to look at this issue of, you know that drug has been in existence since time immemorial. And of course, we know that for nearly every year we talk about drug, we talk about drug abuse, we talk about drug misuse. And of course, it is always tilting the negative impact, tilting towards even the usage, the misuse of drug, tilts towards the youth more, and definitely the negative impact will bounce back on the society, so to say. So today we want to look at drug misuse, addressing the impact among youth. We have two guests in-house. First, Olufemi Basharon, who is a drug policy advocate. Good morning. You're welcome to the program.
Good morning, sir. Thank you for having me.
And of course, we also have representative of the students for. Okay, this is student for drug policy, sensible. Okay, student for sensible drug policy. We have a representative from that association, Adeniyi Moronfolo, also in the house. Good morning, you're welcome.
Good morning, sir.
Let me start with Mr. Basharon.
Yes, ma'am.
Drug abuse.
Yes.
It has been in the society for so long. Can you tell us some forms of drug abuse that you know or you've read about?
Thank you. Good morning once again. I think to understand what drug abuse is, first we need to understand the legal aspect and the illegal aspect of it. The legal aspect in the sense that there are certain drugs that are legal. You cannot be arrested for being in possession of them. But then those drugs can also be abused. For example, at one time in the country, we heard of when youth were abusing a particular kind of cough syrup, where the syrup was meant to cure cough ailments, but then on the other side, an excessive use of it has a way of affecting the psyche of a person. That is a legal drug. You cannot be arrested for having that cough syrup. However, there is an illegal side of drug abuse. Drugs that are by law should not be found with you. So we need to first understand abuse. Is it in the legal aspects or in the illegal aspects? Now, when we talk about the legal aspect, where drug abuse is most rampant in Nigeria, we look at drugs that people are to use for medical reasons, but then begin to use outside medical prescriptions to achieve one or two other aims of their own. For example, this drug is to be used one in the morning, one in the evening, one in the night, like the cough syrup I was talking about. It comes with a spoon. They tell you use one spoon in the morning, one in the night, or they just give you a prescription of how to use it. But then you find these people open a bottle and then gulp everything at a go. That obviously is drug abuse, and that is one of the concepts of drug abuse. Thank you.
So, Mr. Moronfolo, do you agree with what you just said?
Yes.
Do we have forms of drug abuse, or is it for you to just use those drugs and don't look at the abuse side of it?
Yeah, we have forms of drug abuse, and we can't underestimate that any drug we use without any professional advice or any professional giving you the prescription, then you are abusing the drug.
So when we are saying that we're talking about, you are a drug policy advocate. I'm talking to Basharon now.
Yes, sir.
When we talk about drug policy, what are we trying to bring out here? Don't we have drug policy that should curb the misuse in Nigeria, or are you saying they should pump up the volume?
Thank you. When we want to address policies, especially when it has to do with drugs, now we need to be very careful about the details of our drug policies. Now, one of the details of our drug policy consists the fact that at the time that our drug policies were formulated, we didn't have this degree of drug challenge. When those policies were formulated, the degree of the challenge was not this high. But now that the degree is this high, it calls for a slight modification of those drug policies. For example, somebody is caught with a particular gram of cannabis. The person is to spend so number of years behind bars. But I tell you, if you visit garages, you visit parks, you visit local places, you find youth in droves who use this. If all of them are arrested and taken to the prison, are taken to correctional facilities rather, as the policy stipulates, we would only be doing more harm, because a person who was caught with just one stick of cannabis and then is locked up with people who are addicted users who can use 20 sticks in a day, at the time that person who uses just one stick comes out, would have been worse in using that cannabis than he was at the time he was arrested and locked up there. And so we need to understand that, look, these policies, of course, yes, are very, very iron-handed to say this is how we should treat people who use drugs, this is what we should do. But then on the second thought, it comes for a relaxation of the policy. Let us take a step back and observe the situation. At the time we're formulating these policies, by our statistics, how many youths were using drugs on a daily basis? What is the statistical record that we have compared to what it is today? And so when we talk about policies, drug policies especially, we are very, very careful about the content of what those policies contain.
So you are saying that the penalty should be based on the offense committed when using those drugs?
Penalty. Now, our current drug policy does not stipulate punishment for usage and punishment for trafficking. I could be a trafficker and not be a user. We've seen people who traffic drugs, who sell drugs, who market drugs for commercial reasons, and they don't use it. And we've seen people who use and do not market. And so we need to understand that there is a huge difference between both. And while there is a difference between both, we need to identify the line. If this is the line, yes, there should be this form of punishment for trafficking, and then there should be this form of punishment for usage. There's always a line between both.
Monofolo, it is worrisome now that whether we like it or not, drug misuse is entrenched among the youth more. And when we look at, of course, if you want to break it down, a little bit of percentage will be among the youth, will be students. So, what are you trying to achieve with Students for Sensible Drug Policy?
Yeah, at Students for Sensible Drug Policy, one of our main aims is education. That we feel we need to align people more, we need to make people more informed, we need to make them know more about drugs. Because it's really wrong if we keep campaigning about saying no to drugs, end for drugs, and we need to let them know why they should avoid these things and why they shouldn't get near these things and the punishment attached to these things and the likes. Because proper education is really important in Nigeria. We find ourselves today because a lot of individuals we are being influenced by friends. Some were being influenced by their parents. Some is coming to where they find themselves, and it comes with a lot of psychological effects. Because I'm a child that grew up in a society where he's been sent to buy these things, finds as a normal thing. So he has no restriction, refuses is the normal thing that his friends are doing. And a friend that his friends came from home and came to influence he or she that you can try this in friends. Some use it for reading, because I found people who are helped to get rehabilitated in neuropsychiatric hospital and the likes. They tell us a friend came to me or she and told them that they can read with it, and when they read, they assimilate a lot. And such individuals get overdose at the end of the day, and the harm is huge. This happens because they are not informed, and that's one of the things we are doing. We're having curriculums, we're having educational sections to educate people where they can go to these classes and know the damages these courses and the long life effects on you, on your health, on society, and on your family.
Members of Students for Sensible Drug Policy, many of you are in the higher institutions.
We have students in high schools, we have in high institutions, and we have young graduates.
Okay.
Professionals, doctors, social workers. Who are willing to contribute to our society.
So how do you now come together, form a viral body that will spread this message across? How?
Yeah, the organization has been in existence for many years now, and that we have a constitution that binds everyone together. We have chapters in high institutions. We have in so those in high institutions are the ones that mainly go to educators in the secondary schools, and young professional, but young graduates like myself, young professional graduates. So we are the ones that support the structure of the institutions with whatever ideas we need, and we also do in partnership with bodies like the Ministry of Health and the National Drug Enforcement Agency. So we have a national structure, regional structure, state structures, and federal structures to make sure we're able to step down to the local communities. Though it's still a long process, but we are actually doing the best we can.
Okay, Olufemi Basharu.
Yes, ma'am.
Before you can proffer a solution to any menace at that in the society, you must look at the causes or the foundation, the basis, what is bringing out the problem in the first place. So let's look at the causes. What do you think are the causes? Because there's no fire without smoke.
Okay, I think before we go into the causes, we should first identify the differences between drug use, drug abuse, drug misuse, and drug addiction. Okay. They are different concepts. Now, in most cases, we conflate drug use for drug abuse. For example, when adverts of alcoholic products come on the media, they say drink responsibly. Now, it is because alcohol, of course, yes, it's a form of drug, but it is legal. You cannot be arrested for consuming it. However, cannabis, cocaine, and others are illegal. You can be arrested for possessing them. Now, if somebody says, I want to take 2 bottles of this, and after taking it, he goes back to his work and does the regular thing he does on a daily basis, he's fine. That is drug use. It becomes drug abuse when it has started to affect the psyche of that person. When the person has started to act extraordinarily. For example, somebody is cool and gentle that we know, and then all of a sudden he becomes so noisy and so loud, because that substance that he or she has taken is now directing the actions and the decisions of the person. That is where drug abuse has come into play. But the person takes whatever the person decides to take, and is still fine. In fact, if they don't tell you, you would not know. That is drug use. Now, drug use, drug abuse, drug misuse. Drug misuse is to use a particular form of drug wrongly. For example, they tell you, oh, this drug is meant to cure headache. You are having stomach pain and you're using the drug.
That's a misuse.
That is misuse.
That's a misuse.
Abuse.
Yes. That is misuse. That is the foundational point of misuse, which is also a form of abuse, because you're using it for the wrong reason. Now, addiction, of course, addiction is when a person has attained a point where if they don't use that drug, they cannot function properly. That is where addiction has come into play. If that drug has not been used, that person cannot function properly. So it has become the daily dosage of that person to use it. Just like a person needs to eat, feel fine, and function properly, in that same manner, the person needs to use that drug.
But in these days, they don't use only drugs for addiction. They use other things.
Yes, that's where we talk about substances.
Okay.
For example, we're looking at the government banning certain kinds of illegal drugs because of the abuse and all of that. Now, I was telling a friend of mine who was having that discussion with me. I said, look, if the government bans these drugs, even though they are legal, people will go for an alternative. There will always be an alternative. We have visited places, we saw how people mixed 1 or 2 things together to put into their body and get high, and we were wondering who taught you these things. We were speaking with children of junior secondary school at one point, and I was asking them, what kind of drugs do you know? What kind of drugs have you come in contact with? I was startled when they started to mention names, and I'm talking junior secondary school students. I was startled. If you at this age know these drugs and their names, then it calls for worry. Now, also, we need to look at the foundational causes of this. One of them is peer pressure. Of course, there's somebody wants to feel among, somebody wants to belong at at one point while growing up, somebody looks at other friends and say, look, if I don't do this, I cannot be one of them. And then there's always that teacher-parental gap between young people and teachers or their parents. There was a young boy at one time that we helped with rehabilitation. He was 23 at that time we met him. He started using these drugs when he was 13. He was an addicted user. He used to steal money from his mom's shop, ran the shop down because he was stealing money constantly. Now the mom was not always at the shop, always at the market bringing stuff to the shop, so the boy was always at the shop. So each time he made sales, he was taking a part of it for his own drug use. Now at one point when we came in contact with him, we asked him, how did you start to do this? And he said at one point he saw his friends using it. His elder brother called him one day to go buy that same kind of drug. He went to his dad to ask, Daddy, I saw this with my friends, they were using it. What does it do in the body? Rather than get an answer, I got a dirty slap. The dad slapped him heavily for asking such questions because the dad didn't expect that a 13-year-old boy would want to know what this thing does in the body. And remember, when we do not tell these children, they go to their friends who equally do not know. And then get the wrong knowledge of what that drug does in the body. Now, if the father had sat that boy down, if you had told him, look, this is wrong, do not do this, these are the effects, and this should not be something you should do, I'm sure at that point the boy could have had a rethink and would have probably stayed away from it. But because the dad wasn't there to give him the knowledge, where my brother talked about knowledge, there is a need for knowledge, sound knowledge about it. If the need for sound knowledge is met, it will guide the decision-making process of that person to say, look, I already know about these things, I know what they do, and I'm not going into
Okay, I don't know. He is talking about parents now, parents, school education. What can the community do? Talking about courses now. What can the community do? Because we see these young people gather in some places to commit that act. And some people will see them and they won't see anything, or they will just pass over them and do as if they are not my children, so that is not my business. So what should the community do?
Yeah, I know if we want to talk about the community, we shouldn't forget that the primary unit of every society is the family. And if there's decay in the family system, it has a long effect on society. So for society to solve any problem, the family system needs to be well articulated and monitored. Like if the fathers, the mothers are not out there to help their children get the best knowledge they have, it will be very difficult for society to function. But the best way for society to function is by working with professionals, social workers and the likes who are willing to contribute their substance to society. Because these people we are talking about society they don't know. You know, and you can't give what you don't have. We are talking about a society that feels it's normal for them to take alcohol, it's normal for them to take cigarette and the likes. So what do they want to pass on to the children? But when you have individuals who are spending part of their time to come and educate these people, either in the garages, in the marketplace and in the workplace, about certain things that has to do with drug misuse, drug abuse and drug dependency. Because I feel when he was talking about drug addiction, he didn't talk about drug dependency. Addiction comes with dependency. And at the long overall effect of dependence and addiction is overdose, which leads to death. Because when you are dependent, you are addicted to these things, it leads to overdose. And overdose prices are not well monitored in this country. Because our primary healthcare system, most don't even know how to treat drug-related illnesses or emergencies. So you can see that it's really a very long way for society to really be aware.
So what's the place of moral upbringing in
moral upbringing is very key. That is with content. You know, when you are bringing in children and the only thing you know about is about force. It is really difficult for your children to approach you, like you mentioned earlier. Once you are bringing your kids up, give them the right knowledge, give them the right information, and let them know the right thing to do. You know, when they know the right thing to do, it will be difficult for someone to influence them negatively. But when they reach out to someone that I'm having this, I see someone asking to use, for example, someone that is using paracetamol. 2 and someone else to tell you that you can do 6 and you'll be fine, and they can't approach their father to tell that someone told me I can do 6 paracetamol. You know, at that point that they can't approach their father, their mother, the child is in crisis.
believes what he has.
When we were young, I mean, probably the only drug we knew then was marijuana. And of course, as we continue to grow and you guys came after us, the jet world, the computer world, we begin to hear of so many other things, including sniffing a stick or opening a sockaway to whatever they were trying to achieve with that. One could still not know, so to say. But my question now is that as a youth, as a drug policy advocate, the process of rehabilitation, how is it in Nigeria? And of course, can a drug addict be fully rehabilitated after treatment from what you must have known from your official position as a drug policy advocate?
Thank you, sir. Yes, it is possible for a person to overcome addiction. It is very, very possible. We've had cases and records of people who have overcome addiction. However, we also talked about the process. Now, in most cases, the issue of stigma affects the recovery process of a person. Stigma, what do you know? And so that does not encourage a person who uses drugs to come out and seek help. For example, somebody who works and say about 50k in a month, and by his calculation spends about half of his salary on drug use. And so because he wants to stop, because of the economic effect it is having on him as a person, he wants to stop. But the stigma that will come with other people knowing is why they will quietly continue to do it, even though they so desperately want to stop.
And they can't voice out.
And they cannot voice out. Now, even people who have made it to rehabilitation centers, to a large extent, their names are changed because of easy identification. For example, somebody's name is Olushola Akorede, and then they take the person to rehabilitation center simply because the family members do not want to be identified directly with that person, in case people who know them also come there. They do not know that, oh, they have a member of their family who is running out already for drug use, and so they change the name of that person somehow so that the person directly is not connected to them. That is one form of stigma as well. Now, the recovery process, if we look at how the delicate requirement to recover from drug use, it requires special skills and special attention from social and medical workers. Unlike the regular ailment where somebody says, oh, I'm not feeling well, I just need to go to the hospital. Drug use, recovery from drug abuse and drug addiction requires certain forms of techniques and skills for that to be achieved. Now, in the Nigerian context, people have accidents, people fall sick and all of that, and they still do not get the best medical care, let alone somebody. I want to believe you understand what I am saying, because we look at somebody who was involved in an accident, we are still struggling to get the best medical attention for such person. Now we are talking about somebody who is addicted to using drugs, who is dependent on drug use, and then you want to consider the kind of attention that that person would also get. With the Nigerian context, it is very difficult to imagine that such person will get the best kind of attention. But then we know that if the process is completed and followed as stipulated within the given duration, of course recovery will be achieved. Now, if we also look at the society, how many rehabilitation centers do we have owned by the government? What is the functionality of the rehabilitation centers that we have owned by the government? Now, I am very happy that religious organizations are coming up with rehabilitation centers at a subsidized rate, which is good. But then, the rehabilitation centers owned by private individuals are expensive. I know of one that charges up to 500,000 naira in every 3 months. If the person does not recover and they still want the person to continue the recovery process, you pay another 500,000 after 3 months. And so that's about 600.
Expensive.
Yes, that's about 600. So that's about 1 million naira in 6 months. It is expensive to run it. Now, in most cases, because of the cost, is why some people just push a member of the family out. We say, look, because we do not have the money to undergo this. One. Two, you yourself, you are not even making it easier on us, because the continuation of the drug use is affecting us financially as a family. And so when that person is pushed out of the home, of course the person needs to live, needs to survive, needs to eat. Where does the person go to? The street. And the street will always welcome anybody regardless. And so that does not make the person better. It only makes the person worse. And so we need to look at our rehabilitation centers, most especially the ones owned by the government. We need to embark on trainings for medical workers. We need to embark on different kind of acquisition of knowledge for people to understand the techniques and the requirements that comes with recovery from drug use.
Okay, Morofolu, yeah, I look at the society, and of course, one of the very many reasons that lead young ones into misuse of drug or drug abuse, because some people will be listening, watching, and say, it's about semantics. Misuse of drugs, drug abuse, it's whichever. But one of the main reasons is depression. And if you look at the challenges being faced by the youth in our society right now, if one is not careful, we could have many depressed people. You struggle to go to school, you graduate from school, no job, no employment, and of course you try to go into business. If you are not careful, you are swindled, and of course all sorts of things. You find people just withdrawing back and just doing things that will make them want to forget. So if you look at these challenges and looking at your association, Students for Sensible Drug Policy, how has it been? I mean, talking about the difficulty to continue to convince the people or the young ones like you that once there is life, there is hope, and drug is not the solution to whatever difficulties they might be going through right now.
Yes, we cannot talk about drug abuse without talking about the socio-economic implications. And it's really good we talk about the poverty area where white people abuse drugs, but we can't, we need to let people know that abusing drugs, abusing certain substances does not solve the problem. And that is why in the past we have had workshops where we had PWD, that's people who use drugs, who are thin, and we try to educate them that this is only going to damage you, it's really only going to collapse your life. So we have this thing we use, be smart, don't start. That when you don't start, you don't get lost in addiction. And if you really want to solve the problem of unemployment and the social implications that come with it, you need to give yourself a target and hope that this is what I want to do, this is how I want to achieve it. But abusing drugs does not solve anything, it has never solved it, and it's going to be making worse and going to kill you. And at the long run, it's going to not have a negative effect on society, because imagine someone who is depressed, driving, is putting the life of other people in danger. Accidents, murder, they kill some people, like what happened to him? He didn't know what he was doing. So those are things that comes with not being informed. So we have a team also use that is education, not incarceration. Because when you are educated, when you educate people, you should educate them more. You should incarcerate.
Do you have the capacity to take your messages to ghettos?
Yeah, we do. We go to ghettos.
And what has been the
response?
The interesting thing is, our time there is hostility when we started.
Yeah, that's your experience. Yeah.
Talking about drugs, because they feel you are coming to take away something that is right for your life. And at times we go to places where we are chased out, but and we have one or two of them that we're able to help that at long run welcome us to certain places. And it's even risky for us because at times some people that calm down by security agencies. And they try to feel their whole together, and that is what when he was talking about stigma and depression from the part of government. We need a system that works, there should be a differentiation between someone who uses and someone who sells, and that is the borderline where we can actually solve the problem, because the problem itself is not the user, but the chain from the traffickers and the influential who have the money to buy their weapons. Someone who does maybe 0.5 ml, 500 kg and the likes, they don't have the capacity to affect a society, community with drugs. No, they don't. There's someone that does it. Trailers, tippers, those that we should climb down. The security agents should really focus on, not the end user. So the end users bring rehabilitation, they need help. So we need to listen to their cries. Okay, what can we do? And that is where I feel the empowerment comes in. And the government, technical, the arm that does it, and training people, empowering people to see some people are not there. Most people we see on the street are not mad people. They are not mentally challenged people. They are people who need help. And if we don't give them help, the problem continues to aggravate and increase in society. And they live among us. We have friends, we have families who need our support. They need us to really show them that here and there, not stigmatizing or allowing them to be criminalized.
Yeah, but for drugs, Charles, let me ask this question. Drugs, for example, is like any other goods. Like if you want to buy the correct Kampala, you know where to go.
Yes, sir.
If you want to get correct pepper soup,
You know where to go.
you know where to go. So I'm sure there are hotspots where the users know how to get it. They don't just get it anywhere, maybe
Yes.
by accident. Are we saying we don't have security that could dictate these hotspots and actually do something about it to curb drug usage? Or are we saying they are doing their best, but the users, the sellers, the traffickers always outsmart them?
Thank you for that question. It is a question that I was hoping I would answer when I come here today. Arrests have been made in large numbers, especially by the organization set up by the government to look into drug abuse, drug use and all of that. That is NDLEA. They go into hotspots, bust people, arrest traffickers and sellers and all of that. But then at the long run, with our collaboration with them, we then started to realize that there is always a tip-off from a competitor. He is a seller here. I am a seller here. He's always having better customers or richer customers. They come, they buy 10,000 naira, 20,000 naira. People come to me, they buy 500 naira, 200 naira. And then because I also want to step up my game, I give a tip-off against him.
To take him out of the way.
To take him out of the way. Not because I want the society to be better. Not because I want drug use to get reduced in the society. But because I want to be richer. And then they come because of the tip-off that they're giving. I give them the location. I give them everything they need to make the arrest. And then they come, boom, they make the arrest. There are still people who use drugs within the community. Of course, they look for an alternative. I am an alternative. And then they come to me. I begin to make more sales. I begin to make more money. That person at one point who was arrested at one point or the other, say maybe gets released, he gets back to that spot. And then they could give him a tip-off to say, whoop, and he's like, and then somehow he also gives a tip-off against that person. And then they come for that person. Meanwhile, he is still in the business. And so it has always been the case. Competition. And so when tip-off comes, it is necessarily not because people feel concerned that look, our youths are using this and they should stop. It is in most cases for selfish reasons, because I want to make more sales, I want to make more money for my own self. And so I would say that NDLEA is doing a great job, especially in Ogun State where we have a partnership with them. They are doing a great job. But then if we look at the challenge that comes with drug use or even drug sales, it is beyond their own capacity to handle. Insecurity in Nigeria is beyond the capacity of just the police to handle. It requires the community So drug use as well, it requires the community. While NDLEA is clamping down on people, the community also has a role to play in educating people. Traditional leaders have a role to play in educating people. Teachers in schools have roles to play in educating their students. Parents have roles to play in educating their children. I was talking to somebody one day and we were looking at the misconceptions of drug use, and we were having this discussion, and I was telling the person who said that drug use encourages crime. That when the person has used drug, the person is encouraged to go into whatever kind of crime available. And I said, look, drug use does not necessarily encourage crime. A person who goes into crime after drug use had the intention to go into crime before the drug was used. The intention was there. The drug probably brought it out and gave the person the morale to go ahead with it. But there was an intention to commit that crime initially. Also, we're talking about another misconception. We were saying that only rich people go into drugs, and I was laughing, and I said, look, with 100 naira I can take you to a place where you get 3 sticks of cannabis with 100 naira. It got to one point cannabis was cheaper than cigarettes. And so if somebody says, look, with 100 naira I can get 3 sticks of cannabis, and then with 100 naira I can get about 3 or 4 sticks of cigarettes, they are just about the same figure. And so we need to understand that, look, the basic thing that we need to put our strength into is knowledge. Give people the knowledge. Give people the understanding. Let people know. In schools, do teachers engage young people in drug use discussion? Outside the school curriculum to say, okay, look, let us have a discussion, let us talk. I have visited secondary schools, and when I heard these young people tell me things, I get scared. If somebody as young as 14, 15, 16 knows these things and is giving me mixtures of substances they put together to get high, I get scared. I give you as an example, I will not mention the names of the products, but there is this black sweet that we take each time we have cough. It's a black sweet, and so they buy a pack of it, put into a bottled water with water inside it. They leave it for about 2-3 days. The sweet gets dissolved inside the water. Then they shake it. It looks so black, like the black substance we drink when we want to get refreshed. And they pour it into that bottle itself to make it look like that product. And then they just begin to sip it. You never can tell if what they have is that drink or what they have is something else. And then they just begin to sip, and you see them, they share with love. You just see them smiling, they are happy. Just as we are seated, they call it gay in gay. No gay, you are not gay. Then gay, you are not gay. And then you give him, he gay, you give, he gay, and then he goes, and there's just this happiness and joy when you see them doing all of that. And then by observation, you just wonder, this is not normal, something is going on. While I was serving, I served in Kwara State, I served in a secondary school as a teacher. I saw these things happen. I saw my students engage in the mixture of substances to get high. At one point now, because these children are smart enough to fool their teachers who do not even know what these things are. They do not even know. Like the mother who went into her fridge, opened her fridge, found a bottle of something that she expects to be in her fridge, just opened it, drank it. She slept for about 13 hours, she didn't wake. At the time she woke, she was asking herself what happened, until she spoke to a neighbor who then told her that, look, what you have taken is a mixture of this and this and that. And she was like, me?
In my own house?
In my own house. Who gave me? I didn't taste it. I only opened my fridge. Said, you open your fridge, let's go and let me see what you have in your fridge. She opened it, and the boy who did this mixture was just 14 years old. And so for him to have been doing that, he had been fooling the mom all along, who didn't even know that what she has been seeing in her fridge was a mixture of different kinds of substances.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, let's look at the effects now. Let's analyze the effects now. Because with what he has said now, there's economic effects, there's health effects. What happens? What is the ripple effect of this drug abuse in the society?
Yeah, the ripple effect is cumbersome, it's huge. Yeah, because it goes beyond just affecting the user. It's more like a global effect, because apart, we were talking about drug use, we should talk about sniffing, we talk about smoking, and we talk about injecting. Because one area that we don't really talk about mostly in Nigeria is injecting, and we have a lot of people who inject drugs too. And injecting drugs comes with a lot of health effects, like hepatitis B, HIV, because they use syringes and they share syringes. You know, those are things we don't even talk about it in this country, but we have a lot of them in the country. And we talk about the high rate of HIV in the country. What are the cause of this? This is just one of the primary effects of it. And social-economic effect, like psychological effect. We talk about the mental effect of abusing these substances, using them legally. That's also a problem. But one thing we should also address is beyond banning. What do we then do? Government should always believe in have a good approach to things like banning. No, it's not about banning. It's about what is the aim of us banning. Like banning brings people's attention to these things. That whenever there is a ban on a product, people are always inquisitive. Like, why was this banned? Especially the young ones. They always want to experiment. Like, I think this was banned, then certainly there's something
behind it.
They want to try. So that is why we are clamoring into we are
so we should not make the ban in public.
We should. It's not even about banning now.
Okay.
It's about passing the right information from the school system. So that is the best place to communicate with the teenagers. And in any society, any the change we really want to talk about should start from the grassroots. We should step it down, and it comes up.
Should we start from the teenagers? Because I know some cases that they will send a girl of 6 years, 5 years to go and buy a stick of cigarettes.
Yes,
interest can come from that.
Yeah, it's a curriculum. We are talking about teenagers because at that stage it's easy for you to access this and to experiment this thing. But for younger children in nursery, primary school, we work directly with teachers. There's a training for teachers that will help them. There's a peer education training that will help them understand how to relate to them, because you need to use the right information and right language. Because there are certain ways if you are able to talk to these kids, you are misinforming them, and it's going to really affect you. They won't really understand what you're talking about. So when we are talking about languages too, we should find the best way to address people who use drugs too. Like some languages would allow them to feel loved and appreciated, and they'll be willing to communicate with you. But when you don't really communicate with them in the languages that they really understand and will make them feel happy, they won't tell you anything. And if they don't tell us anything, then we are not achieving anything as a society.
Of course, a whole lot of people are following us on Facebook. That is at Ogun TV, and of course I've seen so many messages. But let me this one interests me. It's like the Nigerian situation when we resigned ourselves to faith. I want you guys to comment on this and say, well, should we just he said, good morning my uncles, it's only God that can eradicate drug abuse among we youth. God will have mercy on us. This is from Omosoya Shion from Bukemosa. But we are taking the religious aspect again, and I know also that at times when you see somebody that is addicted, instead of actually going to the hospital, going to rehabilitation, there have been cases where such are taken to
prayer houses, either Christian or Muslim. We've seen it. Some prayer points will be given, concussions will be given. I mean, I don't know whether you've come across things like this. Does this help? Is this the solution?
It is not the solution, sir. And it has never even come close to being a solution at all. I remember a 15-year-old boy who the mother suspected was always high on a particular kind of drug. He woke up in the middle of the night, was checking his phone, found some funny content and laughed loudly. And the mother screamed, "Hey, ah!" And the boy was just looking at something on his phone, found the funny content and laughed. And the mother, on the suspicion that he was always high on one kind of drug, called the pastor, and in the morning they came. They
couldn't chain him.
And yes, and they took him away. And he was there, and this boy, while changed, while tied up in church, knows that, look, I am fine. I was only laughing because of the funny content I saw on my phone, which we all do. You come across funny content on social media, you laugh loudly. And these people do not have the required skills and knowledge to treat anybody with drug-related issues. There is a particular, you need to be sound with the knowledge and the skill. It is not a prayer issue, it is a medical issue. To make a person undergo the recovery process of drug-related issues, it is not a religious issue, it's simply medical. And so that has never been the solution, sir.
Okay, we are beginning to round off gradually. So, what will be, to all of us as stakeholders, from the home to the government, to the schools,
to religious bodies,
the religious body, that is the entire society, we are all stakeholders in this issue of drug misuse or drug abuse. If you look at how it has stopped the progress of many youth, what will be your message as we begin to wrap up this segment of the program?
Yeah, my message would be one thing is that prevention is better than cure. That they should be very smart, they shouldn't start, and the effect of these things would have a negative impact on us and allowing us to grow. Because the money the government is pumping to solve some of this problem could be diverted to do other things. The money your parents will be using for rehabilitation could be used to better your lives and your younger ones. And to allow all the efforts of our parents, our families, our society to really materialize, we should team up together, we should work in harmony, and we should say no to the KN.
But can there be a permanent solution to this?
Maybe not a permanent solution, but a progressive solution. As time goes on, we do better on the previous solution, and then we just continue that way. Also, we also did look at the issue of expulsions from schools. But people who use drugs, young people, students who use drugs, and simply because they are caught using it, especially private institutions where they want to keep their morale high and standard, and expulsion is the next thing that comes. And such students who has been expelled, of course, when you're in private school in Nigeria, we know that your parents pay thousands of naira to keep you in school. And so how would you want to go back to that parent to say you have been expelled from school simply because you were using drugs? The fear of going home will probably lead the person somewhere else where the parents themselves may not even imagine that the person would go. Some have been expelled from school for a year, the parents don't even know. And some where the parents have known, they do not want the child back in their houses. And so where does the child go? So it makes the situation worse. Expulsion does not necessarily make the situation better. It makes it worse. Now also, while my friend Moron Folu has focused more on young people in his final words, I will focus mine on teachers and parents. Teachers and parents have a huge role to play in ensuring, because teachers especially spend more time during the productive hours of the day, spend more time with the children, while the parents are at work trying to earn a living. Students are at school with teachers. Now, through proper observation, teachers can identify certain acts of these students and can bring them into correction. You say, look, I have observed this, I have observed that. And once a teacher is close to students, is open to students, is accessible, a student can come to say, look, so person told me I can use also drug to feel like this. What do you think I should do? Now the teacher can then call the students who encourage this person to do this and then begin to give them lectures and orientations. But when a teacher is always hard and harsh, or even when the parent is always hard and harsh, it gives them the fear to want to come to them to ask questions about this. So my message would be to teachers and parents, please be accessible to young people so that they can talk to them.
And I also think that schools, I don't know if we still have, if we have, are they enough, or it will be too bad. This is the kind of moment we need in schools. From the experience you guys have drilled out, quality guardian counselors in our schools. And of course, if you look at the populations of these schools, you think that even one might not be enough, but we just hope that we'll have enough graduates of guidance and counseling that could be useful, because we need them now. It's a very, very palpable period for youth, because things are not really going the way they want it to go, and so they want to look for other ways to cut corner and of course maintain their sanity, and in trying to do so they could go into drugs. So from the experience you have been there, from what you have met in secondary and primary schools, I mean, the importance of guardians and counselors can never be overemphasized.
Yes.
It's on that note that we want to say many thanks to you for staying glued to watch this, and of course to thank our guests. We've been looking at drug misuse, addressing the impact among youth, and of course Olufemi Bashaw, who is a drug policy advocate, has been one of our guests. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, sir.
And of course, we also have Adeniyi Moro-Folu, who is a member of Students for Sensible Drug Policy, also on the program this morning. Thank you very much,
Thank you for
Moro-Folu.
coming. Thank you.
All right, we'll take this break. We'll be back with another guest.